Hello, hello. Let's see. All right, let's get started. My name is Mike Creighton. If you're joining me live, I want to say what's up to the chat. Um, Today we're going to try to paint a head, and I want to kind of cover, well, first, what I'm trying to do with this channel. In case it's your first time watching, I'm doing this as a little bit of an experiment because I want to start illuminating a little bit artist process, my process, I guess, because I'm not really going to be showing anybody else anything, anybody else's work in their process. So one of the things is showing process, examining decisions as they're being made, and then hopefully as questions come in, being able to answer some of those questions and explain things a little bit further than otherwise might get explained, just in a written form. So that's one thing, but also I'm using this as a bit of an experiment to experiment. I want to push myself a little bit. I want you guys to be able to see that, and I want to document the choices I make and my thinking while it's happening. So that's going to be what I'm hoping to do with this video and future videos. In this specific video, we're going to try to do a painting of a portrait, and I did this line drawing yesterday as a means of giving myself a foundation. In my last stream, I started off without a line drawing, and which is fine. I just kind of blocked in silhouettes and things like that. Just checking the chat. Ron, thanks so much for coming to join. I'm glad you found me on Instagram. And Mr. Johnson, what's up? Thanks for the comment. I think it was earlier or yesterday or today. Anyway, so I didn't do a line drawing in the stream last time. And like I said, you can do that. And I was mostly focusing on blocking out big shapes and things and letting that lead the painting. But if you watch the stream, you'll notice that I had some serious errors in the measuring that caused me to have to midstream. Oh, that's fun. My keyboard. There we go. Midstream, I had to kind of position things and shape things again, and we're going to try to avoid that. And by creating a good foundation drawing, you can really avoid some of those mistakes. Now, if you look at this drawing and compare it to the reference photo on my left, which is a guy named Ed, and I got this reference photo from the app Sketchy, you'll see that it's not perfect. But one of the big things I'm trying to do right now is make sure that I don't go overboard on trying to recreate what I'm seeing over here in the source image or the reference image. I'm really just trying to make sure I get something that I'm happy with, that's believable. So, for instance, I can tell that maybe his forehead needs to be a little bit higher, his face, generally speaking, needs to be a little bit longer, etc. I can see these things. I can see kind of what's wrong when compared to the reference photo. But if we took away the reference photo and we just looked at the drawing, I think that structurally we've got something good to work with here. Compositionally, I'm happy with the placement and things. So this will give us something good to paint on. So yeah, I definitely recommend always giving yourself a good foundation drawing whether it's producing a drawing or it's producing a painting. I think it's a good place to start. So watch me zoom in and out. What do I want to talk about today? I want to talk about my goals first for what I'm going to do with this session. It's going to be about 3 hours long. I don't know if I'm going to get quote unquote done with this painting, but I'll probably get pretty far in 3 hours. And you can see the beginning journey of a painting. I'm starting to realize that what I want to do during these sessions is not only give a chance to kind of maybe teach a little bit if I can, or at least give some knowledge, spread some knowledge, but also I need to be making sure that I'm working toward my personal goals as an artist and moving towards an aesthetic that I'm interested in. And sometimes when I just sit down to sketch or whatever, I don't really keep those goals in mind. So I'm going to try to state the goals at the beginning, and hopefully we can kind of keep me in line. If you guys see me moving away from it or whatever, just let me know. Last stream I had somebody call to my attention basically that I wasn't kind of doing what I was supposed to be doing, which was working broadly and working without going too crazy on the details. And it forced me to pull back and kind of, fix that big mistake that I was making. So, if you see me kind of moving away from my own goals, give me a nudge. I'm going to be taking screenshots about every 30 minutes because I actually want to document the process of this thing. And I'll probably be taking a break about every hour just to stretch out my wrists and stuff so that I don't get cramped up and don't get any muscle fatigue. But yeah, my goals for this drawing, or this painting, first and foremost, I'm always going to want to focus on believable form, believable light. I want to make sure that my values overall are cohesive and believable throughout this thing. So I'll be talking about values a lot, values being relative lightness and darkness of a given color within the scene. That believability of form is going to be demonstrated through believable lighting, basically. So occasionally I'll probably see something that's off and I'll try to call it out. And I'm also going to work on a specific color scheme this time. I'm going to go for a complementary color scheme. So in the first 15 minutes here, I'm going to kind of give a really, really light overview of some color theory stuff in case anyone's not totally versed in color theory. And I can point out a couple of different basic color schemes that tend to work. But first of all, I want to kind of take you over to an aesthetic that I'm interested in right now and have been interested in for a long time. First, I'm going to show some photos by Jackie Nickerson, who recently did the lookbook photo shoot for the new Yeezy line, Kanye West's fashion line in collaboration with Adidas. But her work hits a lot of points that I'm interested in. Specifically, I'm interested in mostly desaturated hues throughout the image. I like the strong singular light source. That's, in this case, it's like a big room with a ceiling full of light, which you can see in some other shots in the lookbook. But what it does is it's kind of a diffused light at the same time. So it casts a singular source from overhead, but it's also it's diffused, so it's softer. So it's like a big softbox point light, I would say, coming down. And what's really compelling to me about this stuff is how easily things can get pushed into like the seriously dark stuff. Like you almost lose her legs in here. You almost completely lose her hips and her sort of the bottom half of her torso. You lose a lot of detail, and it's in those darks that I think it's that absence of detail in the darks and the severity of the darks that help push these moments of light into a really interesting place. And so you'll see sort of interesting speculars that happen, speculars being the brights of a surface. And take a look at some of the other images. You can see like most of the figures kind of lost in here. And I just really love that. I love that contrast. And I love the very muted colors. So we're going to kind of stay in a color scheme. Probably it's going to be very similar to this. Here's some more of that. It's dramatic lighting. It's moody. It's just an aesthetic that I'm very much into. So I'm going to try to stay in that realm. And as far as painters that do stuff like this, I just picked one of my favorites, Phil Hale. He uses a slightly different approach to it. His is more of like a directional spotlight, almost as if you had taken a flash photo or were using something like a ring light to photograph a scene. And you get these really, really harsh brights that have small cast shadows throughout. But it gives you he introduces some really beautiful rhythmic forms of dark and light and dark and light and dark and light to give a nice texture to some of this stuff. And you can see that, again, things just kind of around the edges fade off into like just pure darkness where you lose all detail. Here's another one of his paintings. For me, they're just very compelling, and they provide a very apparent sort of area of interest, focal point. His compositions are usually very dynamic. His characters are very dynamic. In his recent work, he's been sort of omitting and doing interesting, almost collage work, and then turning that into a scene. So it's sort of believable, but it's sort of not. And this is from his most recent series that's currently on exhibit somewhere in the country. I can't remember where, but you can see, I mean, in a real scene like this, the light, if it was a big spotlight that was kind of cast downward toward this scene, we wouldn't get all this like fall off. There's barely any contrast in any of the stuff in the lower right hand image, the bottom of the image. Like most of this would be kind of illuminated similarly, and this car trunk or side panel is actually becoming the focus here, and the position of this character kind of directs our eye this way, and all these kinds of things. So using light and modulating light, or at least manipulating light in his case, allows him to draw the viewer to a very specific area and casts a very specific kind of emotional overtone to the whole image. So I'm just really interested in this very muted, very controlled sense of lighting, singular light source kind of stuff. And I'm going to try to impose some of that here. It's not necessarily the best reference image to work from, but it is a thing I'm going to try to do. Now, as far as color goes, I'm going to, well, let's see. I guess first we can just talk about some basic color theory stuff. I think everyone's kind of seen a color wheel. I'm going to actually change this to show you what a normal traditional color wheel looks like. So whatever. So in this color wheel, you've got your primaries, which are yellow, red, and blue. And it's like an equilateral triangle, very similar to this triangle. And then you've got your secondary colors, which are orange, violet, and green. And this is a traditional color wheel, but recently a lot of, and this is actually where I learned color theory, so most of my color theory knowledge is based on this color wheel. But what's interesting is that it doesn't give equal balance to the amount of variety that happens within a spectrum of color. It focuses most of its attention on sort of the reds into the yellows, where there actually isn't that much hue variety, and then really condenses all of the variety that's happening over here into a smaller space. And so recently, in the last, I don't know, century, and along with CMYK sort of color printing stuff, I see Kate just joined from Australia in the chat. Hey, Kate, thanks for coming. Hope your week's off to a good start. Let's see. Yeah, so what people have done, they've kind of condensed the color wheel into a more equally distributed color wheel. And that color wheel is called the Yermby wheel. And we can see sort of the contrast between these two. And what it takes into account, it's called Yermby, which is a weird sort of acronym for You Ride My Bus, Cousin Gus, YRMBCG, which are the key colors and primary colors and secondary colors in the wheel. So you ride my bus, cousin Gus. So yellow, red, magenta, blue, cyan, green. And I said CMYK printing earlier, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and then K stands for black. What this does is it gives you a more equally distributed color space to work from. And so when we start thinking about color theory and we think about monochromatic color schemes, now everything, I'm blanking totally, complementary color schemes, analogous color schemes, when we start thinking about that stuff, the color relations have actually shifted from a traditional color wheel. So just so you know, I'm going to be working from the Yermby wheel and not dealing with this, but it doesn't really matter which color wheel you work from, as long as you, generally speaking, you use the basic color theory stuff and apply it to the wheel you're working with. So Magic Picker, which is an extension you can buy for Photoshop, gives you the option of switching between those two things, displays your colors in a wheel-like fashion. So I said I was going to be working in a complementary color scheme, so I just want to go over the color schemes really quickly. I'm going to actually bring up this Yermby wheel here. It's just a graphic. So if I were to say I wanted to do a monochromatic color scheme, I would choose colors that were in a single hue. A hue is your base color, so like red, magenta, blue, cyan, green, yellow, those are all hues. And then what we want to do is we want to say, if I'm going to just do a monochromatic color scheme, it means one color. So, oh, that's beautiful. Let's switch to a different brush. There we go. So if I said I wanted to do a yellow monochromatic color scheme, or based in yellow, I would kind of stick to the yellow hue the entire way through. And that's one color. And then I would use sort of tints and shades. Tint being adding white to a hue, shade being adding black to a hue, to develop my value scale. Values are relative lightness and darkness of a given color. So that would be a monochromatic example. I should have gotten examples out, but I think that I don't want to go too far into this stuff. Complementary, since you have a wheel here, are two colors that sit directly opposite each other. So in this case, it would be yellow and blue. On this wheel, it would be yellow and blue. Usually people know it as yellow and violet. Violet's a little bit over here. Red and cyan, green and magenta. These are going to be complements to each other on this wheel. So they're colors that exist opposite each other, and you would try to stay within that hue range throughout. And as the colors get closer together, you can see that they wind up in a neutral. So this Urimby wheel has the most saturated colors on the outside, and as you get closer to the center, they start moving toward a neutral gray so that they can sort of dissolve and morph into the next hue across the wheel. I'm not going to get too much into that, but it actually makes a huge difference in terms of how colors relate to one another and how you see them. So another color scheme that you can use is going to be an analogous color scheme. And what that is, you take a color, a hue, and you use hues that are adjacent to it. So in this case, we got red, red-orange, red, and red magenta. And you work within this set of colors. That gives you a slightly wider range of hue to work from and makes for a more interesting image overall. So we're going to be doing complementary today. I want to kind of keep, I would say colors that are fleshy. So I want to stay in the orange to red, and so I know my hues are going to sort of start over here. So the complement to something that's over here is going to be something down here. So it's going to be in the cyanish blue kind of arena. Oh, Mr. Johnson was the guy on Reddit asking for some color theory stuff. Oh, great. Good. I'm glad you're in the chat then. That's why I included this. I just wanted to give a basic intro. So, sorry, yeah. Chat just asked, or chat just commented that I posted something on Reddit about these streams and a painting that I had done, and got some questions about color theory and kind of where to start and how to start picking colors and things. And so it made me realize I wanted to kind of introduce a little bit of color theory, especially since today I was going to focus a little bit more on color as a goal. So yeah, today we're going to do a complementary color scheme. We're going to be doing something in this neck of the woods on the Urimby wheel. So I'll try to be picking colors kind of from this arena. And that's, I think, about it. There's so much more to color than this. I mean, that was really basic. I had this up here because James Gurney, I mentioned this in my last stream, he's got this fantastic book called Color and Light. It's paperback. It covers pretty much everything you can think about when it comes to color and light and pigment and how we see light and everything. And it's just really, really well written, very easy to understand, but it would take a lifetime to kind of master all the stuff he's got in here. Highly recommend it though. He talks about the different color wheels and stuff. So yeah, definitely recommend that book. I'll be keeping notes and posting information after the stream to the description if you guys want links to this kind of stuff so you don't have to worry about writing it down or whatever. But this is a great book about color theory and can help get you really started in a good way for kind of mastering it a little bit. So, all right. I've simplified my workspace a little bit here, and when I say that, I mean I'm not going to use the brushes palette. I actually made a brush for myself a couple days ago. I wanted something a little bit blockier, I wanted something that was directional, and I wanted something that had texture to it. And so I just created a really simple kind of blocky brush. You can see it looks a little bit like charcoal. It's got a little bit of texture in it. I can scale it up. It'll move slow, but for the most part, I wanted something that I could just kind of cut into shapes with and not worry too much about detail, but I didn't want it to look digital. So that's what I created. I also created another brush, which is just a little bit smoother, and that'll help with kind of smoothing out maybe some transitions and stuff. And those are the only two brushes I'm probably going to use during the actual painting. So first things first, when I get started, yeah, we're getting into it now. I'm going to set a timer. I got to set a timer. Let's set a timer. Timer, 30 minutes. Remember, I'm doing screenshots every 30 minutes, so I will get a little buzz. First thing I like to do whenever I'm starting a painting is to get some sort of like a middle gray down on the canvas. But I don't like using just flat gray. I like having some texture. So it helps make it a little bit easier to kind of break up the scene. So I created this like really messy kind of textury brush. You can see it's just this thing. It's my splatter brush. So I'm going to use that to lay down some value here. I'm starting with gray only because I'm going to paint over everything. So I just want to get something in the scene that gives me a little bit of noise to work from. It's a heck of a lot easier than dealing with like a blank canvas. So just something that's a little messy, gross. I'm going to copy that and bring it over here and then scale it up. Doesn't have to be perfect. All right, there's some stuff. Perfect. Perfect, not perfect. Perfect at doing not perfect stuff. All right. I'm not going to use a lot of layers. I do like just painting on one layer the whole time. I think it feels a lot more like traditional media to me. So I do have a separate layer which has the line drawing. And I'm going to keep it on top for the time being. And I say that because I want to make sure I can still kind of see the form as we go in and block stuff in. But eventually I'm going to merge it down and make it just part of the painting, and I'll continue to paint over it. So let's see. Let's start with our blocky brush. So the first thing I want to do is kind of block in the color as best I can. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to zoom out to see all of this stuff, and it's mostly because I don't want to get fussy with details for a while. I'm actually just going to go in and start getting down some color. It's not going to be the right color, and it's probably not going to be necessarily the right value, but you got to have something on the canvas before you can really start to understand what it is you're working with. And I'm also going to be dealing with pretty neutral colors. I'm probably never going to get too far in a saturation point beyond the middle here. So I'm just going to start kind of down here. And unlike the last video, I'm going to try to work the entire image all at once. I think that I'm going to take the background down quite a bit to something a lot darker. So I'm not sure what color yet though, but probably maybe just something really neutral for the time being. So I'm just going to be drawing on the messy layer. I'll save this for now. And yeah, this might be a little laggy. I might actually, yeah, I'm going to reduce the size of this image a little bit. Mostly just so I can get some better performance. Okay, so like I said, we're going to try to do a complementary color scheme. So I'm going to go across the wheel and get some more blue in here. You're going to find that I'm not going to be picking from the color wheel or choosing colors from the color wheel after a certain point. It'll just be picking straight from the colors on the canvas. So whenever you see this weird cursor and then that thing pop up, it means I'm picking a new color, which you'll only see very quickly. Hey, we got 8 people in the video thing. That's great. Hey, Steven. Glad you could join. Good painting earlier, by the way. I saw you post on Sketchy. So, just blocking everything in. Keeping it very rough. What color do we want to make his hoodie here? Do we want to keep it kind of in the bluish range? Yeah, I suppose so. Let's get these values kind of more correct over here. So Kate in the chat just asked, is a line drawing that you started with similar to how you work traditionally? And I would say, yeah, it's definitely more in line with how I work traditionally. I do want to get, I'll figure out how to do it sometime. I might just do something with my iPhone, but I do want to do a sort of a capture of what it's like for me when I'm doing more traditional work, how my drawing, how I measure, how I do all that kind of stuff, whether or not it's, commented on, or sorry, whether or not it's voiced over or anything like that. I just kind of I do want people to get a sense of like how I approach a drawing. It's a little bit more I would say sophisticated, I guess. I don't know, than the video that I did for this drawing. But it's a little bit more in line with how I normally work. So yeah. Okay. Now, I do want to mention or say one thing about this idea of doing a complementary color scheme, and that is that I'm not gonna solely exist in this realm. I think that probably what's gonna happen if I do everything right, is you're gonna see a general, how do you want to call it? Like you're gonna if you were to step back and look at the work, you would say, oh, that's a complementary color scheme. But if you were to actually examine the colors, I'm probably going to go into a lot of different color ranges, or hue ranges, I should say. And that's just to add a little bit more visual interest and make things a little bit more believable, especially when we get into the flesh, where flesh has pretty much every hue under the sun in it. I think that it's important to not just like be really rigid about, I'm just going to stay in this sort of brown and blue area. We want to make sure that we get color everywhere, and we want to make sure that we kind of do get some of these interesting other, like there's going to be some greens, and there's going to be some violets and things like that, and definitely some reds throughout. And so I just want to make sure that you guys know that when you're doing a color scheme, it doesn't mean that you're just sticking to those hues. It means that, generally speaking, that's the impression of the hue that you're going to be seeing in the work. I shouldn't be going this far down to black yet. It's another thing I want to kind of call out. It's try not to go to black, whether it's in traditional work or digital or whatever. It's unless I'm doing something black and white, I just try to avoid going all the way to black too soon. You want to kind of save those moments for when you're a lot closer to the finishing moment, because adding those little extra details of black and white, which you probably never get to pure white, but those details if you wait and add them, they'll really pop at the end. Nope, didn't mean to do that. There we go. So I know I want to take the background darker than this, so we're still in our right area. Yeah. I'm going to paint into his face a little bit here, just so we don't get hard edges with the colors. You'll notice that I'm not just staying in the lines. I think it's really important. And this is true especially with oil painting. You got to paint into color. Not just put things butting up against each other, because it just makes things not look like they're part of the same scene. Yeah. So yeah, I'm thinking I want like this jacket, this back shoulder area to kind of really bleed and blend into the background. I want this whole area to be really dark. I want the focus to be up in his face, up in this area probably. So I'll probably push these darks in his chin and stuff a little bit further down than what maybe you see in the reference photo here. I'm going to probably reiterate this a few times, but yeah, I'm not trying to do a photorealistic recreation or representation of this reference photo that I'm working from. I'm just using it as guidelines for lighting and inspiration, and I'm just ultimately trying to create an interesting image. All right, let's get some flesh tones in here. He looks cold. Let's see. All right, we don't want to go too saturated, like I said. So first thing I want to do, or when you're working with a painting, I don't care if it's traditional media or digital media, I think it's really good to mark your brightest and your sort of darkest dark, and then that's your cap on value. So I know this is not white. If anything, like this is going to be closer to white. So I might go in and get that color up to something close to what it should be. Go a little bit. So I know that there's a good chance that this is going to be probably somewhere in here. That's going to be probably my brightest bright on here, except for maybe the specular on the bridge of his nose. So let's go in, and it's probably going to be, I'm probably going to make it around the same value, so we know that just going to dab that on there. That's going to be our brightest bright. And then our darkest dark, besides the hair on his head, right here, back here, and here, it's going to go pretty much to black. We'll go pretty much to black in some of this area, but I'm going to focus on the area like under his nose. That's probably going to be the darkest. And so I'll bring it down to something close to black, but not quite. Zoom in a little bit. Not trying to make him look like a German dictator, but he'll have to do that for a while. Okay, that's going to be our darkest dark. So let's get some more color in here now. Sample that. All right. So I know that generally speaking, like I said, we can get the colors back a little. We can get them back in line with our color scheme. For now, I'm going to exaggerate a little bit, but I do want to go a little bit yellow with some of the forehead area. And then try to stay a little warmer in the red zone in some of this area. And again, we're not trying to get colors right just yet. We're just trying to get some values in there, give us something to work with a little bit. So we're going to slide over a little bit more into the kind of reddish zone. And keep some life in his cheeks. And there are reasons why I'm doing this. I mean, generally speaking, forehead's going to be a little yellower, cheeks are going to be a little rosier, nose redder, mouth and chin, jawline area are generally going to be a little grayer or greener. And especially on guys. That's largely due to the facial hair. Even if they're shaved, it lends a kind of a bluish or greenish cast to the face. We have the most blood vessels trying to oxygenate our cheeks and nose in this area, and then there's barely anything, no muscle really. I mean, there's some muscle up in your forehead, obviously, but it's mostly just like skin and bone up here. And so there's not a whole lot of blood flow happening. So it just tends to be a little bit more yellow. And usually with the sun, it's the same way. I'm probably going to even go a little bit further toward green. Relatively speaking, it's going to look a little greenish, probably, just because I'm dealing with what is probably a fluorescent light source, or at least a cool light source. Or I want it to appear that way. So I'm just kind of massing in some color right now. And then we're going to go back through and adjust and kind of pick values and things. And here's where we're going to go a little bit more here. Remember, I'm trying to stay pretty desaturated on the colors. It's pretty bright. Zoom out a little bit, too close. So what are we going to do for shadows? If we're saying we're going to do a cool light, we better have some warm shadows. So I'm going to go back to warm over here and kind of get some of these shadows in. Nope. That's an area where we're going to see some warm shadows underneath his jawline. Warm-ish. Some reflective light will happen in there. It's fun painting flesh. That's a weird thing to say out loud. It's interesting rendering human skin and skin tones, I think. I've definitely been realizing and learning that you can get away with a lot in terms of hues and things like that. You can go all over. I think I said this during the last one, but it's really fun just to see how far you can kind of push it. So we're going to have sort of a core shadow-ish thing there. Ish there. We're going to get a little bit more red with our lips. I know I'm zooming in here, guys. I want to try to hit some of these details, and it's a little hard to do it on a small tablet. I don't have a lot of room to move with what I'm working with here. Okay. Probably, yeah, it's feeling better. And as now I'm starting to get, a little bit more, I'm starting to see the tones and the the value relationships here, and I'm going to go through and continually just kind of adjust and modify as I start seeing irregularities or things that are just kind of off in terms of the hue, the value, etc. And I'll continue to kind of put in and fill in areas that are not quite where they need to be yet. What's going on with this ear? Oh, and in case anybody wonders, I don't have music going in my stream or in my videos. I'll probably never have music going in my videos, and two reasons for that. One is licensing rights. I don't want my channel to get a red flag or anything like that, so I'm not going to use music unless I have license or rights to them, and I'm probably never going to use the stock YouTube music, which I think they give you they have like a library of stuff you're allowed to use. And these are kind of boring anyway because they're really long, and I think you should have the opportunity to listen to whatever you please, and I'll just chime in occasionally with my voice. So yeah, no music, in case anyone cares. Okay, let's see. He does have like a little bit of a goatee, so this area is generally going to be, even relatively speaking, I say relative because our eyes perceive color relative to the context of the color that is around them. This is going to be much more neutral, almost green. The shadows over here are going to be a little bit warmer, I would say. We'll probably get a little more desaturated down here. I would say, yeah, we definitely want to stay pretty desaturated down here. Generally speaking, it's too bright. Generally speaking, shadows are going to be less saturated, and there are always rules. Well, with rules, things like that, there are going to be exceptions to those rules. So a good example would be in a shadow area. If you have a bright light, maybe this was like a really saturated blue. Maybe his jacket was really blue. You would get reflective light coming back from a light source that's coming down. It would bounce back up and into the shadow area. The shadow exists because the light is coming down and casting a shadow over the form, and so the shadow comes down, but the light's also coming down here and bouncing, so it would kind of fill in the shadow, and what you would be left with is a core shadow where neither of those two things are hitting, which is why we see core shadows. Reflective light and ambient light both cause shadows to change color, but for the most part, if you're dealing with a singular light source in a relatively neutral environment, i.e. not outside is not really neutral unless it's a cloudy day. Outside you would see kind of a blue shadow if you had a warm sunlight coming down. But yeah, otherwise your shadows generally tend to be desaturated and opposite the color, I would say, of the light source. So that's our brightest bright. Let's add some of that up here. It's feeling a little patchy right now. I just need to get in there and start making some moves. Yeah, we'll unify these. These hues are definitely a little scattered right now. Nope. Okay, we need some more shadow in here. And I kind of want that to be, I think, a little more. I don't know. If my light's kind of greenish, maybe I do want that to be a little more reddish. We'll figure it out. Gonna have a really pretty bright highlight on this part of the ear that I don't know the name of. My anatomy is terrible, by the way, guys, in terms of anatomy knowledge, and that's because I never took an anatomy class when I was in college like I should have. Instead, I took something else and missed out on all kinds of amazing knowledge. So I should probably get an anatomy book and learn. It's one good thing sort of about being an adult. I feel like I've got a lot more, what do you want to call it? I'm a self-starter now. I can actually read a book on a thing, try to learn it, and even if I'm not getting graded on it, because I know it's serving a purpose that is adding to my other goals. Doop, doop. Doop, doop. But yeah, I should probably get an anatomy book. I think I heard one recommended. Oh yeah, I just watched a YouTube stream from another artist, professional artist. He's really good, and he apparently teaches, and he recommended. He's got an anatomy book in his syllabus, so I might try to pick that up and just learn some names for things. Yeah, I'm almost thinking this is actually too hot. Too bright. So I'm squinting a lot while I'm looking at this stuff to try and see if my general values are getting closer. I mean, I know I'm pretty far away from being in a good spot to actually start really getting detail and stuff, but I'm definitely getting a little bit more of a overall. I'm getting closer to the values I want to be at in the face. I don't know what color to make this shirt. Mr. Johnson just asked in the chat, or asked a little bit ago. I've heard someone say that they like to make whites blue and shadows warm. Is that just a style thing? It's actually, I don't think it's a style thing so much as just like a, I guess, physics thing. Generally speaking, when you have a light source, it's going to have a color temperature, like the quality of light that it casts down on objects is going to have a certain color to it. The sun, depending upon what time of day it is, has a certain hue. Generally speaking, like midday sun is going to be it's going to be a warmer light source. I'm going to say this in a very fragmented way because it's a little difficult to talk and do this at the same time, I've discovered. Anyway, so that warmer color of the light uh, will bring out warmer highlights because of the nature of the light. So the whites will actually generally tend to be warmer. And then the shadows, therefore, are going to be cooler. And you can do the inverse. We're going to try to do a little bit of the inverse here in this painting. I don't know how far I'm going to be able to push it, but I'm going to keep the shadows a little bit warm because I want to say to myself that my light source is cooler, and so my highlights will hopefully be a little bit cooler. What's really interesting, the idea of like cool white, like a cool white versus a warm white. When you're using oil paint, time to take a screenshot, guys. Let's save this, save a copy. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Open recent. Nope. Yep. This one. Sorry, guys. Give me a couple of seconds. Too vertical. Nope. Getting close. Here we go. There we go. That's better. I have no idea what I was talking about. I know I was talking about color temperature. Oh, whites in oil painting. It's titanium white. I'm a little tired. But anyway, different whites actually have different kinds of temperatures depending upon what medium you're working with, so you can kind of accentuate the coolness or warmness based on what kind of white you use. So it's actually it's not so much a style thing, not even necessarily a preference thing. It's more about what you're trying to visually communicate in your scene and using the correct lighting and color temperatures to support that. Oh, and I'm glad you guys are chatting in the chat room. That's great. But if anybody does have any, when you have a question, it'll help me a lot if you just put the word question like in all caps or something as you're asking your question. Since people are actually chatting, I think it'll just help me see it a little bit better whenever I look over at the screen. I didn't bring any pizza, by the way. I kind of joked in Instagram that I would have pizza as a way to lure people here, and I don't have any. So if you came for the pizza, sorry, there won't be any pizza today. I feel bad about that. Okay, what does this look like without the line drawing? Sometimes it's kind of hard to see a thing. So we can, if I squint my eyes right now, there are some areas that I'm not really pleased with in terms of just purely value. I need to kind of work on some of this area. I need to finish out this eye a little bit more so I can see if it looks right. Got to get some stuff in the ear and take this down. And after seeing this, I think I actually want to kind of bring some of these colors for the time being into here, maybe just more desaturated. Oop. Okay, Kate just apologized in the chat for either chatting or not using the word question. Totally fine. I just wanted to let everyone know that I am only looking over there occasionally, so I want to make sure I see any questions that come in. We might almost be ready to kind of merge the background or the line drawing into the background and just kind of paint on top of that. Let me get this ear sorted a little bit better and then get some of these values in the eye a little bit better. So let's see. Got a bright plane here. Same thing on the top of the ear. I'm not moving enough. I'm not using my arm enough. So I'm feeling a little stiff here. Need to actually move my whole body to draw this stuff. This has got to get darker. This has all got to get so much darker. I really want this to be, never mind, I'm not going to say anything about that just yet. I will talk about that once we start refining color. Some red in here. Right. What's happening? I sort of, when you see me, just so you know, when you see me moving my hand aimlessly kind of in figure eights around the canvas or whatever, it's actually kind of tracking exactly what my eye's doing, which is looking for like places that I just need to address. So I kind of mime out where my eye's trying to look, and in order to find areas that need to be reworked or fixed. I'm probably going to let that eye just kind of drift off into the background a little bit. And like I said, we need to make sure we paint into the color so that we're not left with a bunch of separate kind of colors throughout. Right now we don't have enough color budding happening, so I'm going to go through and get some of this stuff to touch. You guys need to be friends. Background, foreground, friend time, friendly time, adventure time. Okay. Same thing over here, guys. I might actually, we'll see. I might lighten this up a little bit, because I think it might look more interesting if this side is, like if this is darker on the left, and if maybe it gets a little bit lighter on the right. I don't like those strokes. Trevor Kyler. Trevor, question. Why do you do the background on the same layer? Good question. It's a really good question. I do it because I don't personally like futzing with layers. I think that for me, I want to stay. This is a personal preference thing. This is not a technique that is like the better way of doing things. I prefer to not work with layers at all as best as possible, or as much as possible, because I find that me painting and doing stuff and being gestural and like looking at my image, etc., requires a certain kind of focus and attention. And then as soon as I have to switch over to something that is very not art-like, I guess it's not. It's all of a sudden I'm dealing with a user interface, and here's an application, and I'm toggling between layers and moving layers and all this stuff. I think that for me those are two different modes of thinking. And I come from more of like, I don't come from a traditional arts background per se when it comes to using computers. That doesn't make any sense. Let's start over. I went to art school and studied computer art with a concentration in interaction design. And that means that basically I am very used to, when I'm on a computer, using applications and dealing with user interface and doing design. And it's very much not a, I would say, an artistic, kind of endeavor in the sense that like traditional media art is. And so whenever I go back to that kind of context of like manipulating user interface and stuff, I suddenly feel like I'm a designer again. And I feel like I'm in that mode of thinking and in that mode of working. So I do everything in one layer, and it helps me make sure that I don't necessarily get everything right away, that I just keep reworking and painting over, and eventually it actually adds a cohesiveness, I think, that maybe working in layers doesn't do. So I could have started this by doing the background and then doing a layer and then doing the foreground over top, and it would have, kind of blended in a little bit better. That might have been a smarter thing to do, to tell you the truth. But yeah, I tend to just work in one layer, and I don't want to deal with too much other stuff. So that said, like, I'll be totally honest, the last couple of paintings that I've done, not the last couple, but a few paintings that I've done in the last few months, digital paintings, I've definitely like done the background and then created a new layer and painted over top of the background once I got the background in. So I will say that right now we're not seeing a lot of color harmony. Very aware of that. I keep zooming in and out for no good reason. Sorry, guys. Here we go. I gotta start painting over some of this stuff. Feeling that nose. Feeling like I like it. I think I want to bring some of this up into here. And ears, shadows. I don't know. What are we doing? I feel like this needs to be a little more desaturated. This is a little warm for my taste. Or sorry, a little too saturated for my taste. I'm gonna get some shadows in here too. Better-ish. Darker. Save. Get some separation of form down here. We need a shadowy thing here. Push that jacket off of his body. What's going on? What do we need to do? Something like this. Just trying some stuff out. If it doesn't look right, I usually just go over it. Another question from Katie. Question, how long do you generally work with the sketch before you remove it? To be totally honest, I don't know. Because I've only recently started digital painting. So what I try to do is I say, okay, when I take away the sketch layer, am I still getting a decent read? Am I getting a decent enough read of the form and everything? What I actually won't do during this session is I won't take the, what do I want to say? I'm actually not going to take the sketch layer away. I will merge it down into the paint layer and just keep painting over top of it. And until the sketch kind of disappears. I'm actually not too afraid. I'm frankly a little interested in seeing some of the sketch kind of come through in the painting. I'd prefer to see a little bit of the drawing kind of be part of the painting. I like seeing the foundation and some of the underpainting work in any given kind of work that I do. It's like a nice, seeing some scaffolding, seeing some of what goes on behind the scenes, kind of a thing. I just like seeing that stuff. So I'm actually just gonna paint over top of it, and we'll hopefully lose some of that scaffolding and the foundational stuff, but some of it's going to be in there still. So there's no real rhyme or reason when to kind of start just working over the top of it. But yeah, we're getting to that point though. We're almost there where we're going to start just painting over top of the lines. I just want to make sure I have a good map happening here, so that I don't lose some of these key markers for shadows and things like that. Squinting my eyes. We got some problems happening in the eye here. Yeah, it's a little better. Okay, what's going on with the ear? I think I got a little too much warmth. You generally want to have warmth happening in the ear, because the ear, and the inside of the ear, I should say, the ear is, it's all cartilage, and it's basically translucent, especially if you get light behind it. And since we have light coming from overhead, this part of the ear is generally going to be a little bit more red. That's just physics again. So we're going to see some more red there, and we'll see a little bit of red in the shadow. But it won't be too red. Like I said, we'll pull the colors back a little bit. So over my quadrants, I said yellow, red, then bluish, sorry, yellow, red, bluish, grayish-ish. I don't know if I'm going to do, like, in terms of overall value for the general composition, like I definitely want the background to be more, even darker than this, a little less halo-y. And if you look at our value scale over on our color picker, I mean, you can see we're already, like, even down here, we're already down pretty dark in terms of general brightness. But I want to go even darker. Like I said, I really want to push into that range of where things start getting lost and falling off. And I also want to find this background. While it's sort of very brown now, I'm going to get it probably closer to a middle, like somewhere in terms of between the two hues, between sort of the browns and the blues. It'll probably wind up very, very neutral and very gray. We're not too far away from it as it stands, but we'll figure out how to make this work. I'm not totally sure of my strategy yet for doing this, but this is why I'm doing this stream, and why I'm not doing something that I know how to do necessarily. I might have a goal, because I think it's good to have goals, especially when you're practicing, because otherwise you're just doing the same things over and over again. And I'll probably do a whole video on just that at some point in the future. But yeah, I'm going into this with a goal for sure. But it doesn't mean I know exactly how I'm going to do it. I have some color theory ideas for how to make this happen, and I know pretty much when things are looking wrong. The question is, do I or will I be able to actually correct this stuff? I don't know. That's what I'm going to try to do, and hopefully I can. And if I can't, then hopefully I'll have at least learned something along the way. But yeah, I'm not going in here with the, it looks kind of weird. I'm not going in here with the intent to do something I've done before. So taking a little bit of a risk, and you guys can see if I pull it off or not. Ooh, what is this? What is this? What's happening? There we go. Much better. I got a question in the chat. Question from Ron. Hey Ron, are you using a blending mode or no? The answer is no. I am not using a blending mode. It's another one to the point of the question earlier. Like, was I using a separate layer for the background, etc.? I try not to get too much into blending modes either. While they're super useful and have their place in digital painting, I have actually been trying to take an approach that focuses, I would say, as much on traditional painting techniques as it does maybe digital painting techniques. I don't want to get so far into the realm of digital that what I produce here sort of can't be produced in a traditional media, because I'm actually doing this as a means of studying techniques, color, etc., that can be applied in both realms. This is basic sort of color theory, composition kind of stuff that we're working with here. So I don't really go to the blend modes, and I know people will use it for using like a overlay blend mode and stuff like that for getting lights to be very luminescent and things like that. But I'm not into that for the stuff that I work on. I'd rather try to achieve that, make the effects myself, if you will. So you won't see me switching blend modes to like multiply or anything. But good question. Okay, we're going to need to start pulling these values, or sorry, these hues together. It's a little, I think this is looking just really weird to me right now, mostly because it is, the colors are so not integrated with one another right now, so I'm a little distracted by how bizarre and that whole area in general is just very flat to me, which I'm not too thrilled about. I think we're close enough now that we can kind of get rid or start painting into the sketch. I think I might want to get a little bit more happening in the shirt hoodie, but I think we're getting close. What do I want that to do here? I'm going to need to figure out how to correct this, the under part of his chin. There's some stuff happening here that I'm not too thrilled about. And I got to remember to stay loose. It's the thing I had a problem with last time. I just started getting really tight and noodling with stuff too much, and I think that can completely destroy some of the spontaneity and energy of a piece. So I'll try to stay loose. I definitely don't dislike this brush that I made. I think it's working out pretty okay in terms of what I wanted it to be able to do for me. What we're gonna do, probably gonna, yeah, I'm gonna bring up that shoulder just a little bit. Bring it up in terms of value. Just to give it a little dimension. All right, so I think next step is we darken this a little bit more again. I'm not really sure what my problem is with this. I'll need to take a step back here in a second, evaluate. Everyone can go get a drink, go call a loved one, pet your pet, say hi to your roommate or spouse, comment on the weather, you know, the things people do. Yeah, I got to figure out what to do with that area down there. Just I'm looking at the reference photo and I'm seeing low contrast down here, and I think I've got a little, for this particular image, my image, I've got a little too much warmth happening, but it is getting lost, like this whole shape, and it's a little flat, so I'm going to need to figure out how to make that work a little bit better. I know we'll get there, we'll figure it out, but I need to make sure it has some amount of volume and is separate from the hoodie area. And I'm not going to do that with line. I'm going to try to do that with form. Yeah, so let's see. I'm going to dupe this layer. I do want to keep my original drawing. And we're gonna lock that layer, but we'll hide it. And then I'll merge this down and save. I want to keep the original drawing just in case I ever need to refer to it over top of everything. But right now this is all one unified layer. So we'll start getting in here and painting over stuff, and we're gonna try to unify these colors. I might resort to some sort of like layer, what do you want to call it? An adjustment layer to get things a little bit more unified, just as like a shortcut, rather than just doing a paint over of everything. But I'm going to try not to. I'm going to try to actually find the colors that I think are right and start weaving them in here. I think from overall, like a tonal perspective, I think you know, you can look at, I added the navigator to the upper right here, and so I think that we're close to where we want to be tonally. Now that I'm looking at it, I might want to bring this background up in terms of value a little bit more, just because I do want to see some of the silhouette of the guy's face happening, and I'm not going to see that if I make it too much the same value. So we'll figure out how to make that work as well. Yeah, we'll get that silhouette pop back out and get all this stuff working. Anna, you need to stop texting me because it goes to my messages thing. Sorry, it's a friend who is in the chat, and she's sending me text messages, and that's totally fine. But they also appear on my computer because I'm on a Mac, and Apple decided to make that a amazing feature. So you don't know if your computer is ringing, or your phone is ringing, or your computer is ringing, or whatever. It's fantastic. All right, so I'm just gonna get this. Sorry, this is bugging me right now. I want to get this a little bit darker, and then get a little bit of a highlight here. Nope, too much of a highlight there. All right, good enough. Yeah. Still bugging me. I'm picking nits right now, guys. This is not what I should be focusing on. All right. So we'll stop here for this second. I'm going to take a 5-minute break and stretch and do all that kind of good stuff. We'll save, And actually, we're going to do a save a copy. Right. Yes. That's what we want. Okay. And then we'll save it right back over what we just did. Okay, so do we have a couple of copies happening now? Sorry guys, just want to make sure that I'm not blowing this entirely. So first layer, second layer, yeah, we're getting closer. All right, good, good, good. All right, I'm going to look at the chat really quick. Mr. Johnson says, make the shirt green. Yeah, I don't know, that might be a thing. We still want to try to make sure we do a complementary color scheme, so we can make the shirt. Well, yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out how to make that work, but green's a good call on that. That might work better. Let's see, G Bjorg, question, do you ever work out the palette beforehand when painting digitally? Sometimes, yes, I do. I'm trying not to lately, though. And let's see, I worked out, when I paint digitally, no, I try not to work out the palette. I kind of just want to see what colors happen with something intended in mind. And when I've done paintings, like real paintings, I do work out the palette beforehand because I need to make sure that I am able to match colors correctly. If the painting lasts more than one physical session, I need to be able to mix the same colors again. And I also try to work out the palette because if I'm going to work on a bigger painting, I don't want to waste a lot of media. So there's a reason why I don't really work out the color palette too much when I do digitally, because I don't have to worry about oil paints or anything like that, wasting them or any of that kind of stuff. I get to do it over again or whatever. So, and I also find that if I have an idea of the palette that I want to get to, and I try to achieve that in the process of doing it, then I'm not just like eyedropping colors from a predetermined palette, which I feel like interrupts my flow as well. So that's why I don't work out the painting, the palette for the painting beforehand. Hopefully that answers the question. I'm going to take a break. I will. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this. It's going to be amazing. What kind of font do you guys want to use? I'll use Gotham. Sure. Sounds great. B. No. Yes? Oh, it's there. Sorry. That was a dumb idea. All right. I'm going to take about a 5-minute break or so. Hopefully be back around 5:30 my time. Yeah, we'll see you guys in a bit. Thanks for watching. Hey guys. All right. Let's keep working on this thing. So I'm a huge advocate of stepping back from work about, I would say, probably about every hour or so. And when I say stepping back, I mean literally stepping away from the work, not looking at it, and then coming back to look at it, but not so long that you lose your sense of flow. Um, the reason why I do that is because, and also another reason why I've kind of started using or at least I'm trying to use the navigator up in the upper right, is because I want to have a bird's eye view of what's happening in the painting, and I want to be able to see what mistakes exist in the painting. And sometimes when you're working on something for too long, you can't see the forest for the trees. I would say you're just caught up in like the details, and your eyes get used to things. So immediately upon looking at this, I know now that I don't want the background to be sort of a muted brown color. I think that I actually want to pull it over into a bluish hue. And so this is how I'm going to do that. This is where Photoshop is actually really good, and I'm going to permit myself to do this. I'm going to make sure I get rid of some of these blues that were hanging out down here that I added before. Try to get this into a value that I'm kind of happy with. Yeah, something like that for now. And then I'm just gonna do a really rough lasso. I'm just gonna mask out as best I can, sort of, the background. And then we'll paint into it again, just as we've been doing, to get everything unified. But I'm going to do a hue shift across the entire thing. All right, so there's my layer. So hue saturation. So I'm going to try to bring it over into, I drop this really quick, actually. I drop this. It's a little more blue than I want it to be. I want it to be closer to this kind of a blue. Yeah, getting a little bit closer. So we're already 180 degrees, so we'll come back around. It's definitely going to be more saturated than I want it to be, so we'll take back the saturation a little bit. Yeah, I'd say somewhere around there. Remember, I don't want this to be like a super saturated thing, and I realized why I wanted to do that after stepping away. It's because I really do want the focus of this thing to be his head, obviously, and I felt that the background was kind of competing with it. And I, in my mind, originally thought that, oh, it's just going to look like this weird head floating in an environment if I have the background kind of the same hue as the jacket, but that just wasn't turning out to be the case. It just started to compete with the head. So this will let me explore more of a value range, more of a hue sort of range, and do some interesting things in here without having the background kind of compete with it. So I'm going to go ahead and merge that down, and I need to save this. Hold on a second. Just want to make sure I'm not screwing anything up here. Yep. Save as this place. Okay. Okay. Perfect. Rembrandt's, work was largely about light and his ability to capture really interesting, dramatic, sort of chiaroscuro light sources and the subject matter within those light sources. This idea that from a ground, and if I push this background even darker, we'd start to really feel that. So that's definitely what I'm kind of going for with some of those original examples I showed earlier, and I'll be pushing these values down further, probably, as we kind of move around this again. And let's see. He also said the Magic Picker palette's pretty nice. Yeah, it's a really nice. It's a slightly better version of the Photoshop default picker, I would say. This is probably very similar to Corel Painter's wheel. Hopefully the stream won't freeze again. If it did freeze, I apologize. My internet's been a little weird today here. All right, so now the question is, what do we try to do? What do we try to do next? Well, I want to clean up some of these edges a little bit, and then we'll start painting into the line work, and then kind of pulling some of the values into an area that, or sorry, some of the hues back into a range that feels correct within their own family, and we'll hopefully get back into a complementary color scheme. So we're going to have more saturation in the face, and we'll have pretty desaturated colors in the jacket and background, and that'll hopefully that contrast will hopefully be interesting. What was bugging me over here when I was looking at it from far away? Oh yeah, it's too dark. So just kind of going through and double checking my values. I'm going to try to get some of this to come back and not get so lost in the background. Not entirely sure how I want to address that. I think it's just a matter of bringing up the background a little bit. What's really interesting is this background feels very blue. Feels very blue. But if you look at the saturation over in the color picker, like, we are basically gray at this point. This is definitely not a very blue, and yet it kind of feels that way. And I think that's what's really interesting about using some of the color schemes based on a color wheel, is that when you juxtapose colors, they'll start taking on properties based on the colors around them. And in this case, since we're doing a complementary scheme, the blues are going to feel really blue against the blues are going to feel really blue against the subject that's going to have oranges and warm colors in it, without having to say, like, this is blue. You really don't have to go that far with it. I'm just kind of totally messing up the background. We'll get this figured out here. I should have offered a disclaimer at the beginning of this video. I'm not a professional. I'm just trying to get better at art, and these videos are a way of me vocalizing my process, so that it makes it a little bit more concrete. So take my advice and the things that I say with a grain of salt. They're not always going to be entirely correct, if at all. Okay, so we'll probably want to go go a little bit darker in here. We'll bring it back up, but I just want to give myself a silhouette here that's actually going to work against this background. Just a little too much. We need some more red in that nose. Okay, so let's start fixing this a little bit. I'm noodling kind of close in here, just because there's some intricate planes and stuff that I want to make sure I sort of get right. I'm probably not going to get it right on the first try, I'll say that much. Knowing me. So one thing I do want to say about, I mentioned it I think in the last stream, edges. You know, the things that are kind of moving away from you generally tend to be, they're going to lose some of their contrast, their edge contrast. And so what I try to do is I try to stay away from too much edge contrast on things that are turning away from you with their background. Like I'll go in here, and you'll probably see even more later, but I'll just paint into the background and kind of let the color bleed away. I'll reduce the contrast and details back here. Like I'm probably not going to get crazy into this eye. It's going to stay almost pretty much like this. And the stuff that I want to kind of come at me, which is going to be the stuff that's closer to me, like this nose, you know, the cheeks and things like that, that's where I'll focus on maintaining an edge. And it's totally just a trick that artists use to give the illusion of depth and help direct the eye to where it needs to go in a piece. So yeah, edges on things that are moving away from you or away from the viewer, keep them soft. Just keep them soft. There, my silhouette's kind of popping off now. It's too bright on his upper lip, but let's see. We've got some stuff happening in this chat. Steven says it's valuable stuff. I'm glad you think it's valuable. Mr. Johnson says it's a skill to vocalize all that I'm thinking. Yeah, it's not one that I've possessed much skill in. It's taxing, I'm realizing, to maintain a train of thought. But I'm glad, I hope I'm lucid enough to have this be making some sense. And I could be the best artist in the world, but not a great teacher. I don't think you mean, okay, I think he's making a general statement. I'm not the best artist in the world, obviously, so I would assume he's making a general statement. But yeah, I think that's one thing that I have noticed about any sort of person who makes anything. There are amazing artists and creators. I don't care what, like so many different kinds of disciplines. I'm a computer programmer by day, you know, and computer programmers are notorious for this, but they can be incredible at their craft. Absolutely, like the best world-class craftsmen at whatever they're doing. And I'm totally going to diss on programmers here. but their ability to communicate what it is they're thinking it can be really terrible. And I think that, well, especially in that profession, I feel like you work with other people on a team, generally speaking, and you should be able to communicate. I think it's a skill in and of itself, and it's a practiced skill, and I think it's really important. And it's a really fun thing to learn how to do. I'm kind of noodling here. I don't want to be this close to the drawing. I'm not totally happy with some of the stuff that's happening here. Yeah, I totally messed up that nose, didn't I? I need some more fleshiness. I need some more saturation. That was a nice stroke. That was like sometimes I'll get these lucky brush strokes where they just they land in an interesting way, where in the piece, I mean, it's not right over here comparatively, but there's just like a moment where something really nice happens. Anyway, it's always fun when that happens. I'll probably cover it up later. This is too bright. And now it's too dark. All right. So he's pretty green on top, and he's pretty fleshy in the middle. And there's a lot of value problems happening. Well, let's start bringing him into one hue. I feel like overall, I mean, there's value problems, but I think that this is working sort of okay. We're still seeing a lot of scaffolding from our original drawing. I'll start trying to use a little bit more pressure in my stroke making, and try not to get too close. Hair's the same way, by the way, guys, with edging. You can see I'm just going to paint straight over some of this stuff and try to keep it pretty soft, because you want hairlines, both in terms of hairlines up here where the hair meets the head, as well as the hair silhouette. You generally want that stuff to kind of be fuzzy, unless you're drawing a Lego figure, because their hair is not textured or fuzzy. So you want it to kind of bleed into the background in places. And I'm doing that thing where I move my cursor around and I sort of examine the piece and figure out what areas I want to kind of tackle and touch next. Yeah, shadow areas. There's a really interesting thing about shadow areas. You can reduce detail in shadows in a very interesting way. And what I mean by that is you do not have to put as much detail into shadows as you do into areas that are in the light. And it's just because naturally as humans, we're unable to really see details in shadow in real life. And you can exploit that fact in a piece of artwork by just omitting detail, and our eye will totally read it just fine. It's kind of a neat trick. So yeah, avoid too much detail in shadows. Anna just asked me if I set another half-hour timer. I did not. Thank you for reminding me. I really appreciate that. I'm setting that timer now, and I know that I started again at 5:30, so we've got about 8 minutes left on this one, so I will set an 8-minute timer. Thank you for that. World Z is asking, am I using a tablet or a mouse? And Mr. Johnson says he'll put $100 down on a tablet. That's correct. I am using a tablet. I'm using an old Wacom. A lot of people say Wacom, but God, if you watch one of their videos for their products, it is Wacom. I'm using a Wacom Intuos 3, a very small tablet that is, I don't know how many years old, but it's a beast. It's a tank. It's lasted me a long time. It's very small. It's a 4-inch by 5-inch tablet, and I'm not pleased about that. I would prefer that it were bigger. I really love this yellow sort of forehead, but I'm going to take it a little bit orangier. Let's push back his hairline a little bit more. We're going to figure out what to do with this under the chin area. We do need to darken some of this stuff though, so let's kind of make sure we're staying in that range. There we go. That's a good value. I don't like this purpley color. Feels purple. It's really not that much different from a lot of the stuff I'm using, but I want to kind of bring it back to center a little bit. I'm probably not going to get too detailed or do too much detail work during this session. I mean, just in terms of time, it's like already almost 2 hours in. I think we've got a pretty good value block in. I'm definitely going to work for another hour on this though. Try to get rid of some of these construction lines. They're kind of distracting me now. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to get super detailed on this guy. If we get to a good place and it starts getting interesting, what I'll probably do is I'll do very similar to what I did last session. Last time I did a live stream, I continued. I did a second part because I didn't get as far as I wanted to. And if I think I'm going to get far enough for this to be like, oh, there's a demo of a painting, that's fine. But if it looks like it could go further, I'll probably do a follow-up session. It may or may not be live, but regardless, I'll do another similar sort of session where I just show how I take it a little bit further or whatever. But we'll see. I'm not going to focus too much on too many small details in this one. All right, so what's not working? Let's do a trick. Let's make a trick. I'm slowly getting the colors, back into a range that I'm happy with. Like I said, it's going to take a little while to kind of unify them. But I'm going to do some flippy around kind of stuff, and I'm not really looking at the reference much anymore. Just trying to see if the forms are reading right. Do it the other way. Take a look at this. It helps me see right away like what's not working right, and I can already see that like I want to see more of a core of a shadow here. This feels a little flat. I want to see a little more core here, a little more in the jowly area, but I want to keep the shadows warm. Grayish but warm. I need more of a gradual blend up here. And then we're going to definitely need some reflective light, like down in here. That really helps the form kind of pop out a little bit more. When you've got your core of your shadow, and which is going to be this like area here, and then you use reflective light or ambient light to kind of give that shadow shape a little bit of form. And that'll just help that form read a little bit better. It feels like it's a little too dark. What's happening here? Let's do this. I see what's happening. Need a little bit more of a highlight here. So if I think about planes, you know, I want this to kind of be the brightest, one of the brightest areas. This is another one. My light's coming from up here and close to us. So it's like it's I don't know how to visualize this, but let's do it like this. So our light's kind of like casting down like this on him a little bit. So we're going to want to make sure this plane right here across the bridge of his nose and sort of this part of his cheek is going to be one of the pieces of his face that is most facing that light, as is this area up here on his head. And with that knowledge, we know that those are going to be the brightest, not only the brightest areas, same thing with this part of the ear, but that's where our specular is going to be. And so we can start thinking about all of these different areas of the head and the face in terms of planes, where things are more sort of geometric. And we can just think about how light would hit those planes, you know, like if it's facing away, it's going to get darker. It depends on what direction it's facing away. As it really faces away, it goes, you know, even darker. So yeah, we're just going to try to keep some of that top of mind. Like this cheekbone is going to be a little bit brighter. This area. Some of this down here, probably. I think I need to bring this, I just need to bring this area darker. And this. Is that a convincing sense of light? Timer. Save. Anyone who's just joining us, I'm just keeping a slow set of files that show my progress. So we can see where we've been in this painting from here to here. Oh, it's flipped. It's fine. I'll fix that. I'll fix that in post, guys. Don't worry. Okay, we need some more darkness here where that jacket is going to be hitting his skin. Did that wrong. Okay, try it again. It's like that. And darker, darker. What am I not liking about this? I feel like it needs a little bit more reflective, sort of ambient light coming in here. Okay. That's probably a little much. There we go. Try to bring this up a little bit more. Okay. These shadows are going to be a little darker. Oh, am I seeing a lot of, yeah, that's one of my problems right there. I'm seeing too much of that scaffolding. It's starting, it looks like I'm trying, like it's hair, but it's not. It needs to be value. Nope, too much. There's a question in the chat from Worlds or World Z. Is my job a painter or am I a graphic designer? I'm actually neither. I used to be a designer, probably from when was I a designer? I was a designer in the marketing world when, let's see, 2003 to 2006. 2002 to 2006 or 2007. And then I became a programmer. I mean, I was always programming, but that's when I decided to actually just say I'm a programmer and not do both. And then I've been sort of programmer slash kind of creative director for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And painting and artwork in general is, I'll call it a hobby only because I'm not making any money off of it, but it is definitely something I want to and I'm consciously trying to pursue as a revenue stream, and it's a thing that has just captured my interest and attention in a way that very few things have. I've been making artwork or drawing and stuff like that since I was a kid, so this isn't all new to me, but pursuing it diligently is very new to me. I'm just totally messing this up. I'm flipping back. Flip, flip. Okay. We'll get this area sorted. I keep saying that, but I promise we'll do it. We'll get it fixed. I'll get this mouth fixed at least a little bit here. I'll try to. Don't want to get too close in there. It's starting to, see, this is a thing I have to try to be careful of right now. This is starting to get a little airbrushy feeling. It's a little soft. So what I'm going to do, two things. I've been using the same brush the whole time, but I'm going to bring up my brush thing and go to transfer. Make sure we can't go too far down on the opacity. Nope. Sorry. Don't want that. Transfer minimum 40%, 30, 20%. Yeah. I'm going to try to stay and try to make some pretty deliberate marks here. And with that, I mean, I want to not make things super smooth. I want to make broad strokes. I want to get active in this piece. So it's going to be about picking and painting over some of the stuff that I've got and finding some bigger, bolder statements to make with the brushwork. Otherwise, we're going to wind up with something that looks very Photoshop and way too noodly. I don't care too much about the details. Like I just don't. What's going on? What's wrong? It's not dark enough here. I notice I go through this. This happened in the last stream where I get a little rigid, a little dialed into some of these value changes and forms and stuff like that, and then I just start going to town on some stuff. This is still not looking right. This looks like silly putty. Anyway, yeah, I'll get really tight all of a sudden, and I forget that I'm doing it until I start realizing that a certain aesthetic has taken over the painting, and then everyone gets sad and they leave, and so I have to kind of bring it back. So we're going to try to loosen it up a little bit here again. Just get some marks down that really define some of these broader values. So I'm just going to do an eyedropper really quick, eyedrop sampling. And I want you guys to keep an eye up in this area. We should be trying to stick to, excuse me, some of this like orangey. So yeah, we've definitely, like, we're still in a complementary color scheme right now. Like we've got blues, right? Blues, 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 all in the blue area we want. And then we've got a face that's up in the, you know, orangey, reddy, orangey, yellowy area. But we're still getting lots of what are what look like different colors. It looks like we've got red, it looks like we've got green, it looks like we've got some yellow up in here. You know, we've got red in the shadows, we've got red in the cheeks, maybe a little too much red in the cheeks right now for my taste. Even though that's definitely a thing we want to shoot for, but I think we're bringing this back into a realm where the colors are kind of sticking to the initial goal of a complementary color scheme. That's the goal. That's one of the goals. Believable form, strong sense of light. Still haven't gotten into like the super duper manipulation of the light, but we'll get there. Mr. Johnson asked a question. Can you post a download to this brush? I'd like to try it out. Absolutely. It's actually going to be a tool in your, when you go to Photoshop and you go to brush, normally that's like, your brush presets, that's where you'll see a bunch of brush presets. That's not what this is. This is going to be a tool, what do you call it? A tool preset, which is a combination brush as well as a number of other sort of parameters around that brush. I could have easily made it a brush, I guess. I'll figure it out. I'll release something and it will have this blocky directional brush that allows you to paint, and it has some texture and stuff in it. But yeah, it's it'll be I'll put it up somewhere. I wanted to try it out first on a full painting before I kind of vetted it, or I wanted to vet it before I released it out to the world and said, hey, this is a thing you can use. But yeah, I'll totally release it. Let me write that down really quick. All right, just have a little notepad here. Yeah. Now I would say, using the reference a little bit more than I want to for figuring out values and stuff. We could do something where sometimes I do have a hard time sort of visualizing what something should look like in terms of if I wanted to push these values down so that they were really severe and really highlight the highlights in this thing. What I can do is use Photoshop, what it's good for, and get a curves adjustment layer out here and push the darks really dark, pull the highlights out a little bit, bring it down to something like this. And that can be more of a map that I use to get sort of the lighting situation that I want. Saturation gets messed up when I use curves here, but overall, like from a lighting value perspective, this is probably closer to what I want to do. And maybe I won't do that for this particular painting demo. I can maybe save that for the next, another, like a secondary follow-up session. This area is still bugging me. It's a hard area to kind of figure out. I feel like I just need to simplify these forms a little bit more so I can see them a little bit better and get away from the silly putty color that I'm really not fond of now. Yeah, we still get a lot of scaffold in the drawing. You don't see it when we zoom out, which is why I keep zooming out so I can see at a glance how this is shaping up. But yeah, I do want to kind of get rid of some of this stuff. I don't really need to get rid of it right now, but I do eventually want to get rid of it. Some of it, not all of it. Let's get some of these darker darks in here so that we can see a little bit more of some of these shapes. And I'm coming in close because the nose is it's a very sort of difficult thing to kind of get right sometimes. Too much, too much, too much, too much. That's right, I started fixing a thing up here forever ago and just totally walked away from it. Just needed to soften some of this highlight. I'm not saying a whole lot right now. His hair looks silly. His hair looks like it's a little bit swoopy, a little bit stuck on. So we'll get in here and make it a little less of a weird duckbill that's kind of coming over his head. I feel like I want a little bit more red in the forehead, maybe. Yeah, something like that. Maybe I'm trying to unify some stuff right now. So I'm trying to get some of, like, even though I know that certain areas of a face are going to be more yellow, more red, etc. I want to kind of start unifying these colors even more. You can totally use Photoshop to do this in a much smarter, more efficient way, which is to kind of use a blend mode, which was a question that was brought up earlier. Do I use blend modes? That would be a great way of kind of unifying or tying in some of these different hues and hue changes so that they start to feel more unified. But I'm not going to do that. I'm trying to get a better sense of my handling of color, how I think about color, and I want to know that when I'm putting color down, that I'm doing what I guess in my mind I'm intending to do. And I know that the only way to get good at that is to practice doing it quote unquote manually. So that's why I'm not using a lot of what Photoshop affords me. I want to be able to translate some of these techniques and my approach to putting some of this stuff together in a traditional sense. I want to be able to do it with painting. So I am trying to make sure that I can, whatever I'm doing, whatever choices I'm making with color and things like that, as best as possible are things that I can replicate in real life. I got a question in the chat from Anna. Question: Do you think about what the man in your painting is looking at? Well, I know in the source photo, I know exactly what he's looking at. I haven't made a story for him yet in this piece, mostly because I've been chatting a little bit a lot, and so I haven't had a chance to kind of figure out what his motivation is yet. But I would say that lately I have been coming up and trying to give myself little stories for what these characters are and whatever they end up becoming. I make up little things in my head for why they're where they are and what they might be doing and what they might be thinking. And I think it's a good thing to do because it gives them a reason to exist in this weird space that you've created for them. That's one thing. It also makes it more fun to give them a little motivation and a little backstory. No. But this guy doesn't have a story yet. I think that I'm probably not going to get to it in this session, unfortunately, guys, but I think that if I take the next proper step with this piece, which is bringing in that element of the lighting that I want to convey, he's going to get a lot more sinister, and I'll probably end up making up some reasons for his existence when I'm doing that aspect of it, or that part of it. You can see I'm just kind of getting rid of some of these lines slowly, making progress. That's a little too red. I mean, we need some more dark action. Bigger. And I am very close right now to the drawing or the painting. I'm going to get out of here. I promise I will get away from this thing. I just want to get a little bit of extra darker value in here so I can feel good about my life and feel good about my day. Let's get this desaturated. Yeah, better. See? Wasn't that worth it? That was worth it. Right. Well, I'll definitely say I'm happy with already some of the initial objectives that I had, and I feel that I'm staying in line with some of them. Believable form, etc. I might, you know what would actually look better? Let's do it really quick. Actually, let's save. Is this selecting anything? Hang on a second, guys. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Select all. Copy, paste. No. What is happening? There we go. This, my Photoshop's been kind of screwy lately. I'm just going to try something really quick. Yeah, I'm probably going to want to take the crop to about here. Something like this. Don't have to do it now, but I'm just saying I probably want to do that. Anyway, yes, I think I'm pleased with some of the things that are happening, some of the goals that I set out to have in this, and actually kind of fulfilling my promises for what would be in here, kind of. Hey, Simone in the chat. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Simone, for those that won't be privy to the live stream here, said, very nice, Mike. And I do want to thank everybody. I'll start thanking people prematurely, but thanks for coming and watching me do this weird thing. I'm really happy that hopefully this has been useful to some people, and that's too dark, and that you're patient enough to watch me kind of stumble through this stuff a little bit. Because like I said, I'm not a professional. I'm learning all this stuff too. I'm just one thing that's really interesting to me already in doing a couple of streams and like the recorded video or whatever is that I have to talk about this stuff and I have to think about what it is I'm doing. And a big part of art, I would say, is, you learn a thing, drawing fundamentals, color theory, whatever. You learn that stuff. And through practice, you eventually internalize it so it becomes second nature. And it's through that deliberate practice that you can then basically internalize it. It becomes second nature, and then you can start moving on to bigger, more difficult, or like the next level, I would say, of whatever the thing is that you need to improve next. Maybe it's composition, maybe it's like narrative, maybe it's all these other stuff, but you end up building layers and layers and layers and layers of experience. And I'm already starting to realize that just by recording these videos, setting out to do a specific sort of set of tasks or goals, and then having to talk about it while it's happening is causing me to internalize like the lessons learned a lot quicker than would happen if I were to just kind of be practicing on my own, in my own space, without anybody to say it to out loud or whatever. And I don't know, it's just something I never incorporated into any other sort of deliberate practice I've done with any other medium or whatever, whether that be programming or anything. And it's an interesting side effect. I think that people, you end up learning faster. You make the connection with the stuff you're trying to learn a lot faster because you're having to consciously pay attention to all the stuff that's going on. Just like a nice thing that's happening. So I don't know how you would incorporate that with your own art practice, unless you wanted to talk to yourself the whole time, which is, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Or if you wanted to do streaming, which obviously I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. But it's something interesting, Maybe it's maybe when you're doing stuff, you keep really thorough notes afterward. You write it down in a journal. What did I learn? What was bad? What was good? I'm kind of saying, I'm just spitballing right now because I'm always interested in how to make my process better, how to make it more efficient, how to learn things faster. I don't like what's happening here. I'm just going to say that out loud. Don't like it. I can fix it. I can totally fix it. But yeah, I think part of it's like taking notes. Maybe that's a way of figuring some stuff out. Just checking out the chat. Thanks, Midday in May. Appreciate you coming in. Hi, Julian Morris. It's nice to see you in the chat. Anyway, yeah. So there's definitely something to be said about the idea of processing something consciously and examining that process and how it can help the lessons stick, help you see things a little bit better. I don't know, life hacks. There's got to be something about this. There's got to be some scientific study out there that says this is an appropriate way of learning a thing. Timer. Sorry guys, I'm just going to do a quick save here. Yep. Compatibility. I'm just going to save over the erase. Did we make much progress from last time? Yeah, we made some progress. Or at least covering up the framework, or sorry, the under drawing. I'm gonna, you know what? Here, let me just open this up really quick, and flip, and save, and close. All right, let's do another look-see. Yeah, smoothing some stuff out. I don't know if it's for the better. It's for the better. Some of this is for the better. I'm gonna take a step away for about, I don't know, a few minutes here. I need to see this a little bit better. I'm losing some of the cool things that were there, and so I want to make sure I bring those back. Some of it's like blocking out some of the planar stuff, so I am trying to say a thing with my texts. Yeah, I'm going to take a quick break. I want to get some context. I want to be able to see this a little bit better, and I want to stand up. Yeah, so I'll be back in just a few minutes, guys. Thanks for hanging in there. We've got about another half hour to go, and then I'll probably wrap it up, and we'll see where we're at, and then I'll make plans for a new session. But thanks for watching for now. I'll be right back. Okay, guys, I am back. I'm back. Yay, yay, yay. Ta-da! Okay, it's good chance to step away. I wanted to take a look. I always, like I said, I take a look at what I think might be off or wrong in terms of value, in terms of whatever, just whatever's off. And what I noticed was, if you look, it's a little hard. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see, but I'm feeling like this area is a little bright. If we think about how light's kind of coming down, it's probably pretty close to overhead. Yeah, this is going to get some highlight, that's for sure, but it's not going to be this much. It's starting to feel like this is kind of coming toward you, the viewer, a little too much. So I want to kind of dull this down a little bit. I think I was noodling with this area a little too much, and I want to bring all of the values down in here a little bit. And I also want to, this is a minor thing, but I want to darken this area a little bit, give it a little bit more form, because right now he feels like he's kind of raising his eyebrow a little bit. That's the impression I'm seeing when I zoom out a bunch. So Let's go in there right now and make those fixes. So we'll just do some of this action, yeah. And I'm now kind of looking for, you notice I'm using a really big brush. Just kind of looking for really broad strokes to help make some of this simmer down a little bit. So like I said, I want to kind of push this back a little bit more. Think about my planes, you know. I want this to be pretty bright, this to be pretty bright, this to be pretty bright, and this to be pretty bright. Those are going to be my brightest areas on his face. Yeah. I like to zoom out when I'm doing these kinds of big adjustments because it helps me not pay attention too much to the details. And since, yeah, I'm not going to talk too much more about that stuff, but I will say, you know, I want this is, doing these videos is partially for me. Like I said, I think it really helps the learning process for me about getting better at some techniques or observation or whatever. But I also want it to be valuable to anybody that's watching. So if you have any ideas for things that you want to see, I don't know, at least touched on, covered, talked about in future videos, whether it's a live stream or if it's a pre-recorded thing, just leave a comment, whether in the chat or leave a comment in the comments, and I'll think about how to incorporate some of that stuff in here, because it's actually, I think it's really good for me to address, to address questions and things like that, because it helps me actually evaluate and think about maybe what a technique is that I use, or how to approach a specific type of problem, or whatever. It's really good for me to have to think about that kind of stuff, and so I welcome your suggestions or welcome your requests for things that might be of interest to you in terms of the topic. That looks a little weird. Yeah, I just want this, I want these videos to have some value to everybody, not just myself. So any way I can help cater some of this content to you guys in a way that keeps it interesting for you, would make me very happy. I'd like to be able to do that. And like I said, I'm no pro. I don't know everything. So maybe you're going to ask a question that I just don't know the answer to. I'll probably make up some answer for something, and hopefully maybe learn a thing or two myself. I don't like what's happening with that eye. I'm okay with pushing the contrast down a little bit here. I want to keep it, remember what I was saying earlier about shadows, I want to kind of keep them not too detailed. So I'm going to start pushing these darks a little bit, because I think it might make some more interesting looking stuff. No. Yeah, we need some more dimension here. Nope. 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 Ugh, this is frustrating. All right. That's, whatever. That's not quite right, but Maybe I didn't. Maybe I made that a mess. This is kind of a mess right now. This is a mess. I'm going to fix this right now because if I don't, I will cry. Nobody likes to see a grown man cry. Trying not to. I'm gonna back the hell out of here. I swear, guys, I will back out in just a second. I just gotta get something working correctly in this area. That's not great at all. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to turn the lid, turn the eyelid a little bit so that it looks correct, while also keeping this like core shadow. And it's just making his eye look all super weird. All right, so how do we make this better? I'm looking at the reference, and I know my eye shape is very different from the reference now. So I know that planar. Let's get this to a size that's about right. So we have a plane here. Actually, that's about right. We have a plane here. We got another one right here. Shadow, another shadow here. Nope. And then we need to darken it. Okay. See? Better. Look at that. Better. Yeah, that's way better. Sometimes you just gotta step off the detail, you know? It's just like the detail, when you get into that level of looking at things and trying to fix it at that level, it just winds up being a mess sometimes. So it's good to back up. It's good to back up. Okay, what were the pieces I said I wanted to do? I want to fix that eye so it doesn't look like he's quite raising his brow, even though it still looks like that, but that's mostly now because of the shape of his eyebrow. So if I take it down a little bit, it's not going to look so indignant or surprised. And then I did notice like I was missing kind of the core of the shadow in this area. Yes, I know. I know. It's okay, buddy. It's okay. Yeah, there's a core where this ridge is, and it's really subtle, but yeah, I want to make sure I kind of capture that, because what that'll do is it'll help turn the form a little bit more and make this look actually more dimensional. So let's get some of that in. That's a little harsh of an edge right now. I'm reading up at the chat right now. Let's see. Mr. Johnson, what draws you to desaturated colors? That's a really, really good question. So desaturated colors, I mean, aesthetically, I'm just more into sort of the darker looking stuff and the mysterious, the whatever, and high key, high chroma colors generally don't appear in that realm. It's more of like it gives you a sense of energy and pop and all that kind of stuff when you're dealing with high chroma, highly saturated colors. And so I tend to not use them unless they're an accent aspect or if it's a stylistic thing that I want to introduce. I mean, I love those colors. I mentioned it in the last stream that I did, that my recent oil painting series used very high chroma colors because I was looking for a more contemporary sort of look. But in what I'm trying to achieve in terms of lighting and mood and things like that, highly saturated stuff doesn't really work. Also, I do want to say that when dealing with skin tones and flesh and things like that, it's really hard to pull off high chroma, highly saturated colors because it just doesn't look lifelike. You can do it in inanimate objects pretty easily, but it's a lot harder to do it with living beings, creatures, etc., because it just doesn't occur in nature. So, it's not something I'm gonna do very often. But knowing those rules, this is what's so amazing about artwork. Knowing those rules, you can take those rules and push them and bend them so that you can make a situation like that really work for your scene or your image or whatever. I'll flip over really quick. Ugh. I can't type my name with a pen in my hand. High chroma. So this oil painting series that I did is using incredibly saturated tones. I mean, this one especially, of my friend Sophie. Very saturated here as well. And it has to be intentional, I think. I think that's what it comes down to. You have to be like, I'm definitely using some high chroma stuff, and it's going to evoke energy. And I liked that it, in this case, in the context of faces that had basically no expression and were deadpan looking at you and were very still and confrontational, having these really high chroma colors added a lot of energy to an otherwise very kind of sleepy composition and piece. So I think there's reasons for why and when you'd want to use high saturation in your color scheme, but you have to I don't know, I guess culturally and as humans what that's going to evoke and what that's going to introduce to support whatever it is you're trying to achieve with your piece or pieces. And that's not to say don't try stuff out. I mean, you should definitely try out different kinds of color schemes. Take the same color scheme. Like I could have taken this color scheme and said, hey, I'm going to do this color scheme, except I'm going to do it really high chroma and just see. I'll do, one end of the color wheel really high chroma and the other end really desaturated, which is, I'm doing a very subdued version of that with this piece. But I think that, yeah, it's you just got to try some stuff out sometimes too. No. So I'm just trying to get a little bit of that gray in there, give some nice visual interest going. It's a good question though. Okay, we got a little bit more of the core shadow kind of thing happening there. It's a really subtle, but I think it helps round out, or sorry, not round out, but yeah, round out the head shape a little bit. We'll bring up a little bit more highlight over here, and that'll give us a little bit more dimension as well. I'm zooming out a lot right now. I just kind of want to see where we're at. This is a pretty neutral. It's a pretty traditional, I would say, looking kind of painting at this point, right? Like it's not pushing any boundaries. I'm hoping this was maybe a good demo now, just of a traditional kind of approach to color and how it relates to skin tones and how you can use that to overall inform everything in a piece and still arrive at a local color that kind of looks correct. I really want to take this and kind of mess it up. I might do it in a pre-recorded session where I just kind of experiment, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing these series. I want to experiment a little bit, and I want to kind of rough it up, get a little more painterly on it, and maybe introduce some more interesting colors in some spaces, in some places. This isn't by any means a finished piece at this point, and it would take, depending upon how much effort, but it would probably take another hour or two to get it to the point where it felt a little bit more polished. Bring out some details that matter. Get some of these shapes to really pop off the page. There's a noise happening in my computer, guys, right now. I think it's in my computer. It's either that or my neighbors are carving a turkey. I don't know if that's what's happening, or they're mowing their lawn turkey. They're mowing their turkey. I live in a condo building, and there's no way that anyone's mowing their lawn next door. So they're mowing a turkey. Or it's my hard drive about to fail, which would make me so sad. No, I'm hearing a noise though, that's all I know. How does that nose feel? Does that feel dimensional? Okay, it's definitely not my computer. My computer's fine. The noise is getting louder. It is somebody that's going to attack me with a chainsaw. Maybe. I'm messing this up. Undo, 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 undo. I think I'm going to bring a little bit more I'm not working so much off the reference anymore. I mean, I'm glancing at it occasionally, but I'm just kind of looking more at the painting now and trying to see, areas that are kind of sticking out at me and saying, "Hey, Mike, you gotta fix this shit, or everyone's gonna laugh at you." Nobody wants to be laughed at. Unless comedians want to be laughed at. They're the people that want to be laughed at. So I can't be so absolute in some of the things I say sometimes. I have noticed that we've almost lost all of our underdrawing. I have at least succeeded in that, painting over some stuff. So that's a neat thing. Just kind of gonna get rid of a little bit more of it. It's a little hard of an edge. Nope. Well, this is kind of interesting. I think that we got this to a sort of a believable spot, right? Like I think that generally speaking, the image, the tones, and their relative values to one another are probably reading pretty okay. If I look at it in the navigator in the upper right up here, I see a human being, and that's pretty important. That's kind of one of the first goals, and then I have all these other goals over top of it. We kept to our color scheme promise. We did our absolute best not to get too detailed, and I tried to make sure I called myself out whenever I was getting in there. But I didn't really achieve the dramatic sort of stylistic lighting, I think, that I wanted to. And what I might do when you guys aren't looking is I might do some smaller, and this is the thing that, you know, I think is doable and should be done, which is do some thumbnails. I'm just going to do some thumbnail explorations. I'm going to take this image and I'll shrink it down and I'll just do a paint over, and I'll try to figure out how to make some of those goals with the lighting and stuff kind of come true, you know. I really do want to see if I can make it happen. So I might just do some quick paint overs and try a couple of different things, and then hopefully I can figure out a way to introduce the lighting, the more dramatic, stylized lighting manipulation that I'm interested in. And that'll be my new learning thing that I'll have achieved with this piece. Got another question in the chat. At one point, do you look at the grayscale? Oh, wow. That's a really good question. You know what? I don't. I don't look at the grayscale. I've never actually said, okay, give me a second. I need to make sure that, you know, the values as a whole on the piece are reading correctly. So maybe we can do that right now and see. Let's see what we do. I know why you would do it. I haven't introduced it into my personal practice yet. A lot of times, just in case anybody's wondering, it can be done to, you know, compare reference to reference to make sure your values are correct. It can be done just to check out your values in general. So we'll do a new hue saturation layer. Sorry. Take down the saturation and look at our value scale. And so the first things I would look at in this are some of the initial things I said, which are my brightest brights on the forehead and the nose, where the light would be coming at the planes on these places. Also here, that's another area where these planes of the face are facing up and at the light source. These are going to be some of our brightest brights, but we don't want them to be white because we are still dealing with flesh, and the light isn't so bright that it's going to have a huge specular highlight. So we said at the very beginning that our shirt, this area, was actually going to be our brightest, so we've kind of lived up to that promise. I think overall tonally this is working pretty good, and that's a good reason to look at grayscale. And I should have been doing this earlier. So thanks, Mr. Johnson, for bringing that up. That's a really good technique for evaluating where you're at in your drawing and like what values may or may not be wrong, because sometimes it's really hard to see value in color. A lot of people struggle with that. I generally don't do this step because I've never really had much of a problem seeing value in color, but I know that that's different for everybody, and it's also a practiced thing. Most of this work that I've done in my life has been dry media, black and white drawing. So when I look at color, local color, and things like that, to make it a drawing that reads correctly, I am always taking that information that I see and processing it and saying what is the value of this color or whatever. And so when I go reverse, I'm able to see that all the time. But I totally chalk that up just to to have been drawing most of my life and to have been practicing drawing most of my life. It's a learned skill. I will say that much. So, but yeah, use Photoshop for whenever you want to evaluate your value scale, and do it with your own traditional media pieces too. I think that's one of the great things about technology now is we can take a picture of something, bring it into Photoshop or whatever, and get a sense of how this thing looks, whether it's just looking at it as a thumbnail or getting a sense of its values or whatever. Use the tools that you have to enhance and improve your art in any way you can. All right, guys. Well, let's see. I'm where I'm at, so I'm gonna stop because it's been 3 hours, and I thank you guys so much for joining me today and for all your questions. I think those were really great questions today. So I'm going to try to make sure I copy the chat and paste it into a thing this time. And I'll deliberate on whether or not I want to do another stream on this painting. You're welcome to leave a comment if you think it should get some more work done on it, and maybe we can do like an hour stream or something like that, like an hour-long stream. Or if you think this is good enough for this, and maybe I'll just noodle with it on my own. I'd like to hear your thoughts, but I'll noodle with it regardless. So yeah, thanks for joining today. I will be updating, all the social networks and stuff with any future posts that I do or any scheduled streams that I have. I got to figure out a way to make it consistent so I'm not polluting Instagram with self-promotional information about streams. And yeah, anyway, so I'll leave show notes and all that kind of good stuff. Now I'm going to try to fix a thing. Now I'm going to try to do a thing here and fix it at the same time. Great. Sorry. That shadow looks terrible. Ugh, yuck. Yuck, yuck, yuck. I know how to make it better. I wasn't paying attention to it. That's whatever. That's fine. This is fine. It's fine. Anyway, yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts on whether or not you want to see me progress on this, or if you're good with this and I'll come up with something else. Give me some notes on what you want to see, if you want to see something. And yeah, I'll just update the description with some more information. So thanks everybody for joining, and I really appreciate it. So we'll see you guys next time.